In the words of the airline industry, put your own oxygen mask on first and then help others. Common sense, right? Because if you don't put your own oxygen mask on first, you're not going to be here, or you're not going to be capable of helping others. And when that happens, you're useless. So it makes perfect sense. Put your own oxygen mask on first. But do we follow that? That's what today's discussion is about, is making yourself a priority. And before you start winching and get tight and say, oh my gosh, but we're here to help other people. We're not just here to help ourselves. Calm down, relax, take a deep breath, because we are going to have a conversation about putting yourself first, why it's not selfish, why it's a priority, and why it's something that you need to really think about if you're not already doing it. And before I introduce my panelist or my guest today, I'm going to just tell you I'm Teresa Palmer. I've been guest hosting the Own It platform, the Motivational Mondays, and the Author's Corner on Tuesday. And I'm author of the book Heal Your Heart from Within. I'm also a holistic cardiology nurse practitioner. And in 35 years, I've learned working with people, and especially women, if they don't put themselves first. And when they don't, they pay the consequences for it. And we'll be expanding on these things. And now I'd like to introduce my co host here today, Jeffrey Berger. He's going to tell you a little bit about himself, and he's going to answer the question, does he put himself first?
Thanks, Teresa. It's great to be on the stage with you again. And I am Dr. Jeffrey E. Berger, and that is an honorary doctorate for mental health and financial literacy and overall well-being. So with that, and you see up here, crypto, blockchain, currency, I am a holistic certified health coach, and I am now taking a financial first approach to helping people and getting them educated about the current financial changes that are happening underneath our feet that are changing the future. And when it comes to answering your question about focusing on myself, well, that's very, very interesting. And I was excited when you talked about this topic being for today. For many decades, no, I did not put myself first because I was in corporate America. And corporate America was work, 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 work. Bottom line was to fill the corporate shareholder pockets, and which ultimately led me to a complete burnout in 2015, which forced me out of the corporate America lifestyle, being an ex-software engineer. And while I have been exploring and going through my transformational journey, that has been a challenge because I always put work first. And now when I'm working within my own business and doing my coaching and doing what I'm doing, I have found that sometimes I'll fall out of that realm of putting myself first. And why is that important? Because I feel that energy really is your primary currency, and energy has to do, that's wrapped around the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and I include financial in that. And if you don't have that energy to that you're focusing on from all those arenas, then it leads to total burnout. And I have burnt out twice since I've left corporate America, but I've learned from those experiences that it is important to really hone in on those traits that will help you focus on what you need to do to stay healthy. And that's the key, because if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And that's what I found. And although it's a challenge sometimes, but that's what life brings us. It brings us challenges, and we get through them, and we move on and learn and share.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I love what you said about energy, because we are all energy.
Right.
That's what we are. And at the crudest level, everything is energy, and you emit energy, you take in energy. And most of the time, it's other people's energy that drains us. That's what drains us
Exactly.
because, we're conditioned also to, especially as women, to be caretakers, and we're supposed to put others first. And I think we really saw that in 2020, a real misconception of what it means to put others first. The people were
Right.
berated if they
Right.
wanted to take care of themselves or if they wanted to do something for themselves. And, that extended even out to the healthcare profession. That, if you didn't want to do certain things that they wanted you to do, then you were berated and you were actually told, well, if you can't do it for yourself, do it for others. You're supposed to do it for others. And I'm not going to get into that because that's long gone. But I think that's part of our conditioning. The
Right.
conditioning
Right.
is do something for others. Well, that's fine and well. But if you can't take care of yourself, you can't be there for others. And if your energy is so low, that
Right.
you start to burn out and eventually you're going to get a physical illness. You may not think that you are. You may think burning the candle at both ends works, but it really doesn't.
It does not.
It does not work.
And
And
I
tell
I want to throw
stories.
something in there real quick, just on a side note here, because and it is true that women do, are the caretakers and they're out there. But I'm going to say, as a gay male, and a lot of people in the gay community are caretakers as well. They focus on others, and it's a different mindset. And I can't explain it. I do have a twin brother, and we're completely opposites. But I have found that, and I've thought about that. Why is he that way, and I'm my way? I'm glad I am the way I am because I don't want to be that way. That's a long
Yeah.
story, and that's another topic. But in any event,
Yeah.
it is yeah. You bring up some really great points, and it's really really important. And I think that many of us, especially who are in the employment industry, if we're not self-employed, there's well, you know what, as I'm saying this out loud, I'm thinking in the back of my head, even if you're an entrepreneur, you're push push push. So I guess it's on both sides, but you don't have the control when you're an employee versus when you're self-employed, because you can stop and take a step back and reevaluate, where corporate just drives.
Yeah. But I think too, you also then have to have your own self awareness that it could
Oh yeah.
only go so far. And I'll share a story that had happened when I was young. I was a caretaker. My mother, unfortunately, had a mental illness. Nowadays, she would be termed manic depressive with a lot of depression. But back then, we're going back 60, 70 some years, there was really no diagnosis for it. And I was always the caretaker. And I always felt that responsibility. So, as much as I tried to have my own life, it always went back to what is going on, with my mother. I need to be there for this and that. And I remember a time when I had a date and we went out. And I always wanted to be home a certain time because my mother would get worried. I think it was like midnight. So if I wasn't home, my mother would get worried. And if my mother got worried, that could trigger mania,
Sure.
depression,
Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah.
So I always avoided that. Well, we were out and we got stuck in traffic, and there
Mm.
was absolutely nothing we could do about it. And I actually had a panic attack. And the worst
Oh
part
wow.
was not only did I have a panic attack because I was so concerned about what would happen because I'm going to be late getting home. There's no way around it. That it actually triggered a pretty serious heart arrhythmia where I actually had to be
Right.
hospitalized.
Oh my God.
So,
And there were
yeah.
no cell phones then.
And there were no cell phones.
Yeah.
And the person I was with had a lot of common sense and took a detour and got me to a hospital. And I could have died from it. And it was all
Wow.
because now we know that it's a part of broken heart syndrome where you just get so overwhelmed with emotion, anxiety, not good emotion, but
Yeah.
anxiety. and loss and feeling that you have to do everything and be everything, that it could actually stop your heart. So at that point, I was probably not far away from that happening. And if I weren't in a hospital, it would have had a very different outcome. And I was only 16 years old at the time.
Oh my
So,
gosh. Here I'm thinking you're in your 20s.
yeah, so that was
Wow,
a,
that
yeah,
really amazes me that that happened at 16.
yeah, yeah. It shouldn't have happened, but and they never really gave me a full explanation because
Sure.
back then you didn't get a lot of explanations about anything.
Right.
And it's funny because when I went into nursing, I think that's what really drove me into cardiology. And it really drove me into that more holistic approach because I really saw where we could be our own worst enemy. And obviously, at that time, I was my own worst enemy because I went into a panic attack, which triggered a cardiac arrhythmia, which could have killed me. So then I wouldn't have been around to help my mother at all. So, what did I really gain? I
Mm,
didn't really gain anything except insight at an early age,
right.
which which was valuable. That was
Sure.
very valuable to gain that insight and to start to have an understanding of how we are there to not only care for others but to care for ourselves. And if you can't be there for yourself, you can't be there for others. And I
Yeah.
can't stress that enough. And I think we're conditioned. We're conditioned that, oh, we have to do things for other people. We have to put other people first. It's this collective idea. And you see it a lot in spiritual practices where you're doing everything for the collective. Well, I challenge that. What about the individual? And, good spiritual practice means taking care of yourself, of making yourself a priority, and then being able to care for other people. So,
Right.
what's your thoughts about that?
No, I completely agree with that. And this is where setting boundaries comes in, and learning how to set those boundaries and being able to say no. Because I was never a guy. Um, I always said yes because I didn't want to disappoint anybody.
Uh,
But and I still sometimes do, but I'm much more comfortable saying no, thank you, I'm good, or not right now. Being able to just kind of put that on hold, and where before I stressed out from it, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do this, but I'm afraid to say no. I better say yes. And so I think that those types of situations with boundaries, because then you're adding additional. The cortisol level goes up, the stress levels go up, and stress wreaks havoc internally and externally as well.
yeah.
So because it impacts every aspect of um, your entire system. So yeah, it's very, very important. And I think that these things should they should have been taught in school. Setting boundaries and taking focusing on yourself and why is it important, and if you don't do this, what could be the ramifications from that. But we're taught to be robots. My opinion, from my experiences, we were taught to be robots and go out and be a robot for corporate America. And it is what it is. And I always say it's better late than never that I woke up and was able to say, you know what, I don't have to work for corporate America. I can go out on my own and deal with my own stresses and not have it put on by somebody else to meet a deadline. So,
Yeah. And I think sometimes we can't get out of it. I
it's
know
true.
when I first started working, my second job as a nurse practitioner, I
Yeah.
was in my mid 20s at that point, and I did cardiovascular surgery. And it was very difficult, but I knew that I had to set boundaries. And eventually, what landed up happening was the job didn't work out. the job after 3 years didn't work out because the cardiac surgeon couldn't understand what I needed. And we just reached a stalemate. We tried to get a contract together,
Yeah.
that I couldn't be there 24/7, that there were
Right.
other things that I had to do. And his theory was, no, this comes first, and that's it.
And that's
And
their mentality. I mean, I
yeah,
worked 7 days a week for corporate America. I was managing 13 jobs or 13 projects, and it's like managing teams of 56 people, and to take all of that on, it's like, come on, come on. You're just a commodity. You're a number, and if
yeah,
if you can't do it, then they'll hire somebody else and
right.
use and abuse them, as I say.
Yeah. And
So
that's what I was left with. And,
yeah,
I was planning to get out, and I had been kind of looking for another job, and I had a teaching opportunity to come up. But I really enjoyed cardiac surgery. I really, really did. It was phenomenally interesting. But at the same time, when my needs couldn't be met, and basically what the cardiac surgeon said was, well, if you can't do it, I'll find somebody who will.
right,
I said, fine. And I tell you, a week later, he had somebody, and we parted on good terms. I went into teaching, which was a lot less stressful. And
yeah,
I knew I had to take care of myself because I had already, when I was younger, had been through a crisis. And I wasn't going to do that over again
right,
because
right.
it took me a while, but I realized that I am the most important thing. And that if I don't take care of myself, nobody else could really take care of you. They really can't be you. I mean, they could
Exactly.
help you out with things, but they can't do what you need to do for yourself. They really
Absolutely.
can't. The
Absolutely.
best thing they could do is kind of step aside and say, listen, you need your space. You need to put yourself first. I'll figure out a way to do this on my own, or you help me out with X, Y, and Z, and I'll do the rest of it, and become a team rather than, putting the burden on us to help other people.
Right. Right. And there's a lot of balls to juggle with aligning. And as I always say with my abundance and optimum wellness, it's all about being able to find those tools, the resources, like you with your specialty, and being able to utilize those tools and resources, allowing you to create that lifestyle to live on abundance and optimum wellness physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and financially. And all of those work synergistically together. And they're not always equal. There's always different levels, but you try to work on all of that, because if you only have one then and not the others, then you're really totally you're there's an off balance with that. There's no alignment or less of alignment from that
Yeah.
perspective. And that's been a journey, ongoing learning for me. And I'm constantly learning about all of this stuff because so many things are changing from when I started back and left in 2015 to where we are today. It's 11 years. And there's just so many other things that are out there, especially from a holistic perspective, and what we're finding out about the current Western medicine business model, as well as the financial model. You know,
Yeah, there's so much that goes on, and I think we really need to be our own advocates with everything because nobody's really going to be able to do everything for us. We're the
right?
ones that really have to look at things, have to speak up, have to advocate, and we're the ones that have to say when enough is enough. And, you don't want to reach a point where emotionally and physically it takes over
Yeah.
because by then it's pretty deep in the cells of your body and it's kind of hard at that point. A lot of physical illnesses are due to stress. They
Oh,
don't
absolutely.
happen overnight. They
No.
take years to develop. And the more stress you put on yourself, the more you ignore yourself and the more you ignore the signals that your body is giving you. And it does. Maybe that fluttering in your chest, that tightness in your chest, on and off, that maybe you feel like you can't take a deep breath, on and off, little stomach pain. Nothing's that's going to send you running to a provider to find
Right.
out what it is, but these are all subtle signs that something's going on with
Signals.
you, and they're
Yep.
signals, and that's when you need to look at them. And if our TV was sending us those signals, or radio or our computer was sending us those signals that it wasn't working properly, we would be the first ones to go get it checked out and
Right.
try to determine what's going on. But with ourselves, we just don't look at it. We think, oh, okay, it'll go away, or I'm going to ignore it. And if I ignore it, I don't have to deal with it. Well, when it comes to energy, if you ignore the energy and you don't change that energy, it
Exactly.
just gets stronger, stronger, stronger until it overwhelms you.
Right. No, I completely agree. And having experienced burnout 3 times,
Mm.
um, my goal is to never get burnt out from now until I'm in the ocean. That's where I want to end up. So yeah, it's really critical. I mean, I think more people are becoming aware and trying to address those things, and which is a good thing. I think that this generation, well, you know what, there's so many things going on with this current generation of kids. It's just it's like all over the map. Um, but I've come across some really great people who have said, you know what, I need to go out and do other things and focus on what is going to work for me. Whether it's my job or my health or my money or whatever the case may be, and they're becoming the CEOs of their lives. And
Yeah.
that's we always hear that from Marisa, become the CEO of your life. And I've taken that and embraced it, and it has its challenges, but that's where you grow from those challenges, and you learn from it. So, which has been very, very exciting as well.
Yeah, and you are the CEO of your life.
Right?
Your life is what you make it.
Exactly.
And, of course, we don't create everything alone.
Right.
There's always that universal source, whatever you want to call it, whether you call it God. It doesn't matter what you call it, but there is a power that's higher than us that does help us co create. But at the same time, it's up to us to create the life we want. And if we want to be miserable and
Mhm.
not change it, a lot of times we think we're stuck. And, it's like, oh, I'm stuck with this, or I'm trapped with that. Well, you're really not. The door is right there. You've got the door handle. You just need to turn it, open it, and come up with a solution. But a lot of times we become victims, and
Hmm. Yep.
we think that there's no other way out. Even
Right.
with work, a lot of times people feel trapped because they have a lot of financial things going on. Well,
Right.
at that point, you look at it and you say, where could I cut back?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't need $1 million home. Maybe I could scale that back. Maybe I need to do this. Maybe I need to do that. And then that way it eases the anxiety and it eases that victimization. Because I hear a lot of people say, oh, I would love to do this, but I can't because of this. Well,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
could. It may take
Right.
some doing,
Right.
but
Right. Yeah, and that also, I'm going to add to what you talked about. Work. This also is inclusive of family relationships
yeah.
and friend relationships. If you're involved with a toxic relationship, and whether it's a spousal or a family or a friend, if it's toxic and you need to get away from it, you got to get away from it. And what you walk away from it, because if you've tried for years to resolve those types of issues, then and it doesn't work, then it's time to walk away. And then that's what I learned in a situation for me. And it was a difficult decision, but it's the best decision because I have no more stress. 40 years of that stress um, was just taking a toll, and making that decision to walk away, leave it in the past, move forward. It is what it is. Um, every family has dynamics,
Yeah.
um, so which and that was very difficult. It was a very difficult decision, but
Yeah.
like leaving work, and that's why I couldn't leave work because of finances. I mean, what am I going to do? I was making a really great salary, but to go out on my own, that's pretty risky. And so I got to the point where I have to leave. You make
Yeah.
those decisions.
Yeah, and I think you have to. And I think at a certain point, you have to realize that lifestyle isn't everything.
That's right.
You could plan and plan and plan, and things happen. Life doesn't always turn out the way you want it. And, we don't often see that. We often make these plans and we make them for the future, and we say, well, in 10 years, I'm going to do this. In 20 years, I'm going to do that. And I had a very dear friend that we worked together. And this person used to actually bring me lunch when she brought herself lunch, because she didn't like the idea that I was spending, it was only $4 at the time to get a whole meal for lunch.
Oh
And
wow, I remember
she,
those days.
yeah, and she said,
Decades
you have
ago.
to, yeah, she said, you have to put that money away for your retirement, for this, for that. You
Oh wow.
spend too much money. You take vacations, you do this. And I said, but I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Well, she had her whole future planned. And we're talking about, we're both in our late 30s. She
Mm.
knew exactly when she was going to retire, how much money was going to be in that retirement,
Oh
how
wow.
long she was going to work at this job, that she really had so much more capability, because she was actually a nurse with degrees working as a medical assistant because she wanted the state benefits. And she
Wow.
was already planning that retirement. Well, they'll give me my health care. I'll get so much per month. I can't leave this job. Well, unfortunately, in her early 40s, she got early Alzheimer's.
Oh my God.
She had to leave work. She could no longer work. Of course, at that point, where was her retirement?
Right.
Life didn't turn out as she had planned it. And
Oh, that's sad.
unfortunately, yeah, and unfortunately, she died about, I think she was about 48 when she died.
Oh my
And it was
gosh.
really sad, because here was a woman that even knew what kind of house she was going to build and where it was going to be, and at what age she was going to retire, and how much money was going to be there. And it's sad. It's sad, and you see that so often. I see it so
You
often in
do.
healthcare, where people plan their retirements and then they're going to travel, then they're going to do this. Well, maybe they can't walk at that point,
Right.
or they have a heart attack or something goes on that changes that whole dynamic, and they're not prepared for that. So I'm not saying live on the edge and just spend everything you have and
No.
don't worry about tomorrow.
But it,
What I'm saying is, you don't know what's going to go on. And if you keep putting things off and saying, well, in 10 years, I'll leave this toxic job because I'll be at this point, or in 5 years, when my son graduates college, I could do this, it may not happen. And
right.
putting yourself first means understanding these things,
Yep.
that it may not
Absolutely.
happen.
Absolutely.
It's that understanding of, okay, I have to work things out now. I have to be aware of things, because life could change on a dime. And I think being in healthcare, I've always been very, very aware of that life could change on a dime. And you don't want to walk around paranoid and worried about everything. But at the same time, you want to give yourself the opportunity for your best life possible. And that could only work if you put yourself first. Those are my
Right.
last words. What are your last words?
You sealed the deal. I think it was perfectly said. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, I'm hoping that our conversation gave some people things to think about, Or maybe you're saying, yes, I agree because I put myself first. Or maybe you're saying, I never put myself first. Maybe it gives me something to think about. So for those watching, thank you for watching. And for those that will listen to the replay,
Yes.
I hope that it inspires you to live your best life and do what resonates with you. So thank you so much for joining.
And thank you, Teresa, for hosting. As
Oh, no
always.
problem. Thank you so much. And
Bye,
we'll see you
everybody.
next week. Goodbye.